Start live. Broadcasting has begun.
No, I guess.
Nico, do you see people in the chat? Can you tell them to?
Oh, it's to stay there.
Tell the people in the chat to start. All right, so now viewers are coming on the YouTube live right now, and they will be checking in. If you are listening, if you hear us and you are on the YouTube chat right now, please make sure to type in your name and your location into the comment section so that Nico can keep tabs of who is checking in. And if you haven't checked in on the phone, we will have a time for you to check in later on. So now we're going to start with the agenda. So I'd first just like to welcome everybody to April's International Party meeting that we are having. We have these meetings once a month. Preferably we have the meetings on the second Saturday of each month. The last second Saturday fell on an event, the Black is Back Electoral School. So we moved it to have it on the 21st instead. And we are already starting late. So I'm just going to move forward to introducing Chairman Amalia Chatella of the African People's Socialist Party. Chairman.
Well, comrades, I want to welcome everybody to this meeting and to remind everybody that the reason we do this meeting is because we want to try and facilitate a sense of camaraderie among all of our forces scattered throughout the U.S. and throughout various places in the world, that we feel like having these meetings once a month gives us an opportunity to update people on some of the work that's going on and to also hear from you so that you'll have an opportunity to raise whatever kinds of issues and questions that can be raised within the time that we've allotted for this meeting. So I want to again express appreciation to everybody who is here. I want to also express my appreciation to Comrade Sister Maisha, who is facilitating my ability to communicate with you via this platform, social media platform. And right now, all of the work that we're doing every place in the world is contextualized by the move, the very serious and determined move that we're making to build for the party's 7th Congress that's going to be happening in St. Louis, Missouri. It's going to be happening under the title of the African People's Socialist Party Advanced Detachment Vanguard of the African Revolution. And we will say some things that help, hopefully, people to understand why we make this declaration about being the vanguard. Again, it is not something that we say in some braggadocio fashion, but it is recognition of the role, first of all, of all political parties all the time in history, and the role of the African People's Socialist Party as the representative of the African working class. And parties are the advanced detachment of the classes that they represent. And if you're in the US and you're talking about the Democratic or Republican Party, you're talking about parties that represent, these are the advanced detachment of that class, of the white ruling class, the colonial white ruling class. And no matter where you are located in the world, you have these political parties that represent the advanced sectors. They are the advanced sectors of that class. And the African People's Socialist Party is the advanced detachment of the African working class. It is the vanguard of the African nation, the entire African revolution in the struggle to win our freedom. So on from October 6th and 13th, a date that everybody should be noting and should be working toward, the 7th Congress of the African People's Socialist Party will be happening in St. Louis, Missouri. And this is an incredibly insignificant place for the Congress to happen, because here in the St. Louis, Ferguson areas where we saw and the resurgence of the African liberation movement in this country, and the growth, the reestablishment of a certain kind of consciousness of African resistance has begun here. And one of the most fantastic and significant projects of the African People's Socialist Party, the Black Power Blueprint, is occurring here as well. And in St. Louis, we've built the party's presence. The International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement is here. The African People's Solidarity Committee is also located here. So the St. Louis area is really important, obviously, to us in the African People's Socialist Party. So the Congress is going to be happening here October 6th through 13th, and everybody should be gearing up, not only to get yourselves to the Congress, but to bring other people to the Congress, bring the comrades who are in the work there, making sure that everybody has the ability to get to the Congress, and then winning people in the different colonial, the different colonies where we live in this country to the Congress. And that's true also of Africans and other places around the world. So that's everything that we do is contextualized by driving toward the October 6th and 13th Congress. I want to say that the party is moving with tremendous momentum. Was highlighted, I think, in the election campaigns that we saw Comrade Akile and Jesse Neville participate in St. Petersburg, Florida, where we ran incredibly significant and dynamic campaigns revolving around the question of reparations. And so that was really important, really exciting, and that we didn't win the election, but we won a lot nevertheless. And we've taken the question of reparations from this very narrow understanding of it, and as something that only African people can and should be involved in some fashion dealing with, where we've taken and making it a mass issue, trying to force it upon the political agenda inside this country and even in the electoral process, so that in St. Petersburg, Florida, in that dynamic campaign that Comrade Akile participated in, along with Jesse Neville from the African People's Solidarity Committee, you know, we had 200 people or so marching in downtown St. Petersburg, a city that only has 23% African population, chanting unity through reparations. We have, as I mentioned earlier, this Black Power Blueprint campaign that's been going on here in St. Louis, and that's been happening under the leadership of Comrade Deputy Chair Onazene Ishatella and her office. It is an incredibly significant project. In a matter of 10 months or so, that Deputy Chair has dedicated herself to this project, actually moving here and working here for that length of period of time, building an incredible office that she will probably have an opportunity to say some things about during this meeting, and putting on the ground a project of serious, an enormous project, something that none of the Black elected officials has been able to do for the number of years they've been in power, and none of the other so-called Black militant or other kinds of organizations have been able to do. It has been accomplished in the last 10 months. It's a major accomplishment. We have a new Uhuru House. I mean, just think about that. 10 months ago, we had this bombed out shell of a 9,000 square foot building that the back wall was missing. The various aspects of the structure had begun to rot away. And in 10 months, this incredibly beautiful institution has been put in place in an area of the African community that's under assault by gentrification, poverty, various kinds of policy determinations by elected officials. And we've begun to change even how this community looks now. And people obviously have a tremendous amount of pride and respect for what we're doing. As recently as yesterday, when I was in a gym, YMCA gym, wearing a shirt with the Hoodoo furniture or Hoodoo book fair on it, some brother stops me and says that he sees what we're doing up on West Florissant with the building. Everybody sees it. Everybody knows that it's happening here, and it's affecting the consciousness of people, taking us beyond just the kinds of actions that have been happening after Ferguson. People really see that, respect that, and see it as a very mature kind of development. So the party has been responsible for that, and our forces often in the streets, in the communities, with the Burning Spear newspaper, doing regular community meetings. In fact, one happened just this Sunday that was attended by an increasingly growing sector of the African population, and even and so that's really important. This last weekend, the weekend before last, April 7th and 8th, the party played a major role in the electoral school that the Black is Back Coalition sponsored here. And the party has played a major role in building the Black is Back Coalition. And the electoral school is something that I've wanted to do for years, but the coalition has given us the format, the platform through which we can do this. And this was the second electoral school that we've done, the first being a year ago in St. Petersburg, Florida. That was relatively well attended, but this one was extremely well attended, and it had participation from African people who came from throughout the U.S., from the South, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, from the Midwest here in St. Louis, Missouri, but people who came from Illinois, from various places in Illinois. We had just people who came from New York and New Jersey. It was a really important school. And the party, through this electoral school that was sponsored by the Black is Back Coalition, has begun to help with defining and understanding of the electoral process and whether or not it can be used by the African liberation movement. Many people really celebrate the fact that the Black Power liberation movement, African liberation movement, has not participated in the electoral process, but it is an ill-conceived celebration, because the reason the African liberation movement has not participated in the electoral process was not voluntary. The fact is that universal suffrage, that is to say, the right for all African people to vote in the United States, was not something that occurred until 1965. But at that same time, we see the emergence of the ability of Africans to participate in the electoral process. The United States government was murdering and arresting Africans all around the country in various places around the world. So Malcolm X was killed, Martin Luther King was killed, the Black Panther Party laid siege to by various kinds of agencies of the United States government and other organizations, either beaten down into the ground or slandered, so that the actual liberation struggle of African people have been defeated. And then what posed as the leadership of our movement has been the Democratic Party. And this is one of the reasons this whole notion of electoral politics has left a bad taste in the mouths of African people. But now, especially since Ferguson, we see a collective kind of consciousness emerging, and people wanting to participate in real struggle. People want to participate in struggle for self-determination, what have you. Masses of people do. And so now when we go into the electoral process, when we've gone back, we've taken now a re-emerging struggle and using it to batter a path into the electoral process and to shove it down their throats. And now people within the electoral process have the ability to talk about questions like reparations, like gentrification, like the mass impoverishment of our people, like police murder, like the massive imprisonment of Africans in these concentration camps in this country, and a host of other things that would not be on the agenda in the past. When we talk about facilitating this electoral school, we do so using a national black political agenda for self-determination that the party played a major role in developing and in taking throughout the country before winning acceptance by masses of African people, that now establishes a platform that we can demand that Africans unite with as a part of winning unity support for any political campaign that they're involved in. It also becomes the means by which we can measure anybody else who is running for office, thinking about running for office, etc. It was an important school, and it was represented again by almost every tendency in the Black liberation movement was here. So it was not just a thing that we did where only the Uhuru movement or the party was involved in, or the party and perhaps someone like Glenn Ford was involved in. But there were various representatives of various tendencies within the National Liberation Movement who all participated, who all came to the same basic general conclusion and about the electoral process and moving the struggle forward. This is an incredible thing, and it will represent a turning point. And then the following weekend, there was a national conference, a national convention of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, again, at the newly renovated, newly constructed, we should say, newly developed Uhuru House at Aquaba Hall here in St. Louis. And this also was a conference that was jam-packed in terms of participation from North Americans and white people that came from throughout the U.S. And for both days, it was packed just as it was the previous weekend. And this was really important because it represented a sort of watershed in the development of the struggle, in the sense that now we have white people from throughout this country who have accepted the basic line of the party about what being a revolutionary white person should mean, what the white, quote unquote, left, if there is such a thing how it's to be characterized, and it's a whole new era. And the party is playing a major role in defining what the future looks like in terms of the revolutionary struggle. And everybody, all of you who are members of this party, bear some responsibility for its success and for what's happened up to now. And you have the responsibility to take this going into our Congress and building off of this. And hopefully this report that I'm giving you right briefly and concisely now will help to grow your confidence in terms of the significance of the party and the work that we're doing. So when we look at the electoral process, one of the things that makes the participation in the electoral process at this time really important is the struggle that we see happening within the ruling class itself. And many people do not understand this struggle within the ruling class because what we hear most of the time is a cacophony of criticisms coming from huge sectors of the ruling class media of the Trump administration. But that is representative of some tremendous struggle that's happening within the ruling class itself. Remembering that this election that got Trump in office was one that had several contenders. I mean, there were more than 20 different people who were vying for the right to become representatives of the bourgeois political parties and to become president. And what we've said all along is that an election in this country is simply a nonviolent struggle between different sectors of the ruling class for control of the state apparatus, the state. And the state, of course, is this institution of coercion, force, violence. It represents an attempt of a monopoly on violence in the possession of the ruling class. That's what the state is. And control of the state has a lot to do with the success of any sector of the ruling class to advance their own economic interests. And so when you see something like when they're on the Republican side, something like 17 different forces contending, and the Democratic Party side, maybe 5 people who are contending for nomination. All of these people want to be president, and all of these people represent different sectors of white power that wants to capture the presidencies that gives them control of the state. When we say the state, we mean the FBI, CIA, police, military, court system, even extended beyond that to NATO and to the United Nations and all these other things. That means that whoever controls this entity will be able to further their economic interests in the easiest possible way. Can affect what foreign policy is, local domestic policy is, in a fashion that represent their interests as they see it. And so the fact that you have a Trump administration that is in serious combat with sectors of the ruling class means that was not resolved. Who would control the state apparatus was not resolved through the electoral process, and didn't get resolved because Trump ran as an outsider with the money, and not as much as he said, but money that made him someone who did not have to pay attention to the same rules that the other candidates had to pay attention to, because they represented different sectors of the ruling class. Trump exposed that. This is one of the magnificent things that happened in this election that shows how the bourgeoisie is fractured, how the ruling class is fractured. Trump is saying all along that the election is rigged. He said it. He is the one who is saying that the news is fake, the fake media. He's the one who talked about how each of the candidates who were running for office, running for big money, he says he knows it because he used to pay them himself. This was something that no matter, this cannot be taken back. This cannot be erased from history. This has affected how people will perceive elections in this country forever. And that's a good thing, a positive thing that's come out of this. The other thing is that these 2 persons who were running for office, the main contenders, Trump and Clinton, were people who had despicable ratings in the polls. Trump had something like a 60% negative rating going into the election. Hillary Clinton close to 60% going into the election. 100 million people didn't even vote. So that meant that a lot of people did not feel like their interests were represented by this election. And the other thing is that the most dynamic sector of the electorate were people who were attracted to Trump because they thought that he was an outsider and meant something different, and to Sanders, who was on the Democratic side because they thought he represented some kind of a fundamental change that's going to help their lives as well. Well, the African People's Socialist Party represents the fundamental change. And it's something that all of us should really be aware of, that the people want something different, but there's nothing that's happening in the electoral arena right now that's going to bring that to them. What we see is a contest between sectors of the bourgeoisie, again, for control of the state. One, that there was a determination not to let Trump govern, to make it impossible for him to govern. And what we've seen is that, and certainly if he's going to be in power, to make sure that he governs with people who they want to be there with him. So even the guy who was the vice president was the traditional so-called Republican who they put there. So with the intent to get rid of Trump, through having him impeached, forcing him to quit, something to that effect. And that effort is still ongoing. And then, of course, the other candidates, people who are in his administration, they've been kicking them out on a regular basis. Corruption charges, the false thing about Russia. When I say false, I don't mean that it's false that the Russians may have tried to help Trump to get elected, but that stuff happens all the time. The U.S. government does it all the time, making sure that whomever they want to get elected around the world is elected if they can make that happen. But what I mean by false is that they contrive stuff to build a mountain out of this molehill in order to contaminate the Trump presidency, to make him unpatriotic because he's more aligned to Russia than he is to the United States, and also to neutralize, if they can, the Russian influence in the rest of the world, where Russia is challenging the U.S. for influence and et cetera. So this is part of what we're looking at when we have this electoral school. And it's advantageous. It's one of the most important things that we've done in a long time. It's really important and a turning point in the the USM Convention was a turning point in the struggle in this country as well. Of course, what you saw recently is the coalition and the party, through the party, jumped into the middle of this fray around the fake story around Syria's poison gas. It was an incredibly vicious assault on the people of Syria and the government of Syria. In part, that was an attack on Russian influence in that area of the world as well. And it was also the ongoing solidarity or unity that the United States government has with the jihadists, with the Al-Qaeda and ISIS, who they claim to be fighting on the one hand, but they bombed Syria at a time when the Syrians are becoming victorious in the struggle against ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So they bombed Syria. And the coalition took the decent stance and the only stance that equated what they were doing in Syria, that is, the U.S. government is doing in Syria, with what the police and other the Americans do to Africans here. And even said that if you can justify killing and bombing Syria because of a claim that Assad used poison gas or is killing or harming, quote unquote, his own people, then they claim that African people here are their own people too. And that would justify Russia or any other power bombing any police station in this country because of the murder of African people. And certainly it's known to much of the world now how the United States government is responsible through the CIA of putting crack cocaine into our communities. And if that's not chemical warfare, I don't know what is. So it was a fake story all up and down the line, and the coalition and the party was able to take that on. Comrade Louise is in this meeting, I think. I know that he's supposed to be dealing with a funeral or something to that effect, but I do think it's important to say that the party, that I had a very successful trip just now to Africa that will have implications for our work. First, I was in Ghana and in South Africa. That's more important in many ways in terms of the immediate implications it has for the party's development and the party's work. We building a real serious organization in occupied Tanzania or South Africa. And then recently there has been a lot of work that's been done by a sister in Kenya who has built the party organization in Kenya, and that's in East Africa, as doing a lot of important work there as well. And as I mentioned earlier, we're moving now to the 7th Congress of the party, which is going to be incredibly important. I think it's going to be a huge Congress. And all of you, everybody who's in this meeting, should be preparing to get to St. Louis and to spend the week. I know some of you won't be able to spend the week. You may be able only to spend a couple of days, but everybody should prepare to spend the week. You should begin already constructing the illness or the family emergency or whatever the hell it takes for you to get off the job or out of school in order to be here. But this is going to be an incredible Congress, and everybody should be here. And if Comrade Louise is able to do so, I really would like to hear from him in terms of a brief assessment of the work that's happening with the African Socialists International. Are you there, Louise? Can you talk?
Muted. Unmuted. I'm still going to visit. Should arrive. I should be able to do the report that we uninterrupted.
Okay, it seems like I think what I heard is Louise is in transit now, and he can't do that at the moment. But I do hope that we can get that report before this meeting ends. That being the case, what I would like to do then, if I heard him correctly, what I would like to do then really quickly is go ahead and get a report from the office of the deputy chair. I just think there's a lot of important work that everybody should be aware of and should be playing a role in. If you're not, you know, there's no place for a static relationship to this incredibly important work that's coming out of the deputy chair's office, especially around the Black Power Blueprint campaign. And if you're not playing a role now, you should be really looking at what it is that you can do to contribute to the success of this campaign. So I'm going to have the deputy chair come forward and talk to you just briefly about the work that's coming out of her office, and specifically around the Black Power Blueprint. Uhuru.
Uhuru comrades. I think the chairman already gave my report earlier. He talked about the Black Power Blueprint a lot. But I just want to say that we are 98.5% completed with the Uhuru House in St. Louis. And it's been a really major accomplishment under the Black Power Blueprint. And I just really want to recognize all the institutions and departments that really stepped up to make this happen. The first being, of course, my office has really taken on a tremendous part in making the Black Power Blueprint successful, and all the comrades here in St. Louis under the umbrella of the NPDOM that's led by President Columbi Antoinette. And all the comrades that are in NPDOM, I don't want to start naming people because I don't want to miss anybody. Also, we had the Southeast Regional Representative Kobina come down with a crew of people, along with APDEP forces that came down to help make the Uhuru House a success. So we've really been really working. As the chairman said, we had our first inaugural event. The Black Hispanic Coalition came for the April 7th and 8th, followed by the USM National Convention that happened on last week. So we have really, and then following that convention, we had the first Sunday mass meeting of the NPDOM there as well. So right now we're in a phase of trying to complete the other 5% of the Uhuru House, mainly administrative tasks that we have to do, you know, like setting up the offices, you know, getting the alarm sets, getting the keys made, hiring staff, just really taking on the administrative part so we'll be able to run the office like it's being run in St. Petersburg, our national office. We signed the contract for next door. We have those buildings, those 2 commercial buildings and 2 lots. We have, they're ours now, we own them. So we've signed a contract with the demolition company. They have started the process and made applications to demolish those buildings. So in the next 3 weeks, we will be starting back up. Well, we'll be starting back up the Black Power Blueprint this week, but in 3 weeks, we'll start the process of demoing those buildings, which is going to be very powerful. This is where we're going to have our One Africa, One Nation marketplace. We'll have our own parking lot as well. We can do night events. People can come and vend and, you know, keep the resources in the community. So we're looking forward to phase 2 of the Black Power Blueprint. And the third phase, which would be the Uhuru G-Co Cafe and Restaurant, will start immediately after that. As you know, the party purchased the building on Goodfellow in St. Louis. So that's going to be another project of the Black Power Blueprint under the umbrella of the Uhuru Foods and Plies and Black Star Industries. So I'm really asking people to really come out. You know, you're welcome to come to St. Louis at any time. We really need people to be here on the ground to help us complete these projects. Just get in touch with me through email or by phone, and we can arrange for your housing when you get here and make sure that you're taken care of. So we're really looking forward to building and completing the Black Power Blueprint, Uhuru.
Uhuru. And what this report that Comrade Onizene Shatella just made reminds me of is the significance that the regional work is going to be having especially coming out of this Congress. The regional work has always been significant. In fact, in terms of building the party, the regions are just critical strategic components, because what it does is it gives us a particular area in the United States. We've now begun to work with 4 regions. Initially, we had something like 5 or 6 regions that we were broken up into. But Comrade Secretary General Ghazi has made the point that it didn't make too much sense because of how the demographics look. And there's some of these regions where there are only a handful of African people. It didn't make sense to have a separate region for such a small number of people. So we broken it up into about 4 different regions. And we are really struggling to integrate in practice the understanding, the physical, organizational, political significance, meaning of the unity between the political and the economic. And we're looking at, if you look at the various regions, considering the Midwest being a region and St. Louis being a part of the Midwest. And if you look at the South, and you have St. Petersburg, Florida in particular, and Huntsville being regions, a part of the Southern region. And then the West Coast, we have Oakland, California, where there's an Uhuru House there. And then in the East Coast, we have a stronghold in Philadelphia where we have the furniture stores. So we have furniture stores in Philadelphia. We have and the flea market. We have a furniture store in Oakland and the Uhuru House there, as well as Uhuru Foods and Pies, being centered there for the time being. And then here in St. Louis, we have the Black Power Blueprint, which is constructing a market which is constructing Uhuru Cafe Bakery, a school workforce development training process, among other things. And so, and then you have these various regions that's really important, and these shall become hubs of activity, so that our political and economic work will spring from these hubs and take on all of the different states in the regions, and then all of the different cities in the states that are located in the regions, so that almost overnight we should be able exponentially, and this is an exaggeration to say overnight, but we have Uhuru Pies and Foods and etc. So now what I'm saying is that in addition to having these regional components, that every individual in the party must become responsible for the party. That it's no longer going to be possible and appropriate for somebody to just hide in the organization by being a member of the party in the abstract. That means that each individual will be pushed into assuming responsibility for the success of the party. It means selling the Burning Spear newspaper, which means gives you day-to-day contact with people in that particular region that you're working with on a day-to-day basis. Every day, members of the party should be out with the newspaper every day. There shouldn't be a time when we're not doing that, which means that throughout the regions in every city where we're located, we want to open up offices so that people in the community can find us, and they find us, and we got our posters up, our propaganda up, and in these offices, we want to find sometimes Uhuru Pies can be sold from those offices. We are talking about initiating an ability to begin producing our own clothing and things like that in Africa that can, which gives us the ability in Africa to initiate economic development of some sort, and then shipping them here, and they can be sold not only in the Uhuru houses in the various locations that I'm talking about, they can be sold in Zenzele, the consignment shop that exists in Alabama. They can be sold in the local offices that we create all around the country. So this is the real growth that makes it necessary for every member to assume responsibility. You got to learn how to operate that office. You got to learn how to get that office, pay the rent on that office, pay the light bill on that office, hold meetings in that office, get people in the community involved in that office. This is where we're going to be planning in that local community, not in the Uhuru House, but in that local office, in that local community. We will be planning how are we going to do our child care collective program, how are we going to do our collective gardening and things like that. And then we'll be setting up these businesses, and then we'll be encouraging others in the community to set up business. This becomes one of the perfect things to push back gentrification, a lot of the other things that we're talking about, and to take actual physical, ideological, political, and organizational territory. That's how we're going to be moving forward, and you're going to have to play a major role in making that happen. I just wanted to say, some of that moving forward. So you've heard a report from the Office of the Deputy Chair, and I think we've done a relatively good job in handling most of the agenda up to now. I don't know about, I didn't hear exactly what Comrade Louise said, but I just want to tell you that the Africa work is critically important. And we're going to be doing a lot of work there. We're looking forward to the point where we actually produce the Burning Spear in South Africa. So we print it there. And not only do we print it not only in English, but in some of the local languages there. And that's part of what it is that we're looking for. And we're looking for institutionalizing our presence in Africa too. I mentioned the possibility, the probability that we will set up what we're calling factories, backyard factories, if you will, in Ghana to begin with. But then also where clothing can be made and resources going there to our party forces there, to the movement there, and then they can be distributed every place we are located. They will be sold in these local offices as well as in the Uhuru houses and Zinzale that I'm talking about. But so will decolonized be sold in the offices that we have every place. So what we do now, which is really important, but you can just imagine exponentially how everything that we do in terms of economic now can explode throughout the country. But that depends on what we do politically on the ground as well. So we're not just talking about raising money. We're talking about building a politically powerful movement that where the part of what we do politically is taking control of the economic activity, economic life to attack the political colonial economy and to develop a political economy inside the African community that responds to the aspirations of our people to be free. So we take all this territory, and that's what's going to be required of us leaving our Congress. Going into our Congress, we'll be discussing this, and I'm hoping that, and we haven't talked about this. I haven't talked to the deputy chair. We've just sort of, in an informal way, looked at some buildings in South Africa, and we're going to see how we can really get down on the ground in a way, institutionalize our presence there as well, because it will make a powerful difference in everything that happens in South Africa or occupied Tanzania. So unless Louise is prepared, I'm going to move the agenda now. And I just want to reiterate the significance of the 7th Congress. It will be a turning point in the revolutionary movement of the world. It's going to be important, and I'm really struggling for not only you who are inside the United States to come to this Congress, and you have to. There won't be many good excuses that you can come up with for not being at this Congress. Certainly not one that will cannot be addressed in an obituary or eulogy or something like that, which would be a good explanation for why you're not here. But otherwise, we expect everybody, and we expect you to get other people here. We want to remind you that if there are people who we are close to politically, anywhere you're located, if you get them to this Congress, we'll win them. and we'll consolidate them into the party. But you have to be prepared also to work in these communities where you're located. Just being a quote unquote member of the party is not going to be enough. We're also involved now in building the African Internationalist Student Organization. And I want everybody here, especially students in our movement, you need to be joined into this process. I want to hear from you. Certainly the Secretary General should hear from you because the student wing of the party, that's what we're talking about, building a student wing of the party. We're not talking about building your little local BSU where you can plan your parties and bring Umar Johnson to your campus. We're talking about actually building a party organization there, and that will make it impossible or make it unlikely that people will, upon graduation, graduate from the revolution. We give students an opportunity to embrace the revolution in a deep and profound way, and to come into our party, which is something that we do not take lightly. So these are some of the things that that we are involved in right now, and I just wanted to let everybody know that so you can be up on it. So if I don't know if where Comrade Louise is, who heard Comrade Louise?
Yeah, I will try to do it for now. If it's interrupted, then if it's 20 minutes, that I'll go under the tunnel or something like that.
Okay.
So I just want to apologize for the inconvenience of re-reporting this second sample. What I wanted to say that the trip to Africa was a great success because most of you are familiar now when you're ready for the first time somewhere in the Chairman's reports or work when you say the African Revolution has reached its limitation. One of the significance of that was that the African working class has been pushed out of the political life because we lost the leadership like Kwame Nkrumah, like Patrice Lumumba, Michael X, people like that, who were and the assassination of like proper leaders, basically a question of revolutionary leadership. And the African people with IG has been in control of all the process throughout the African nations, particularly on the African continent when it comes to electoral contests. It didn't matter who lost elections or who won elections, it was always the African people that was represented. There has been no one to mobilize the African workers and present in a trajectory that will take us to African revolution. Nobody talks about African revolution anymore. So in a place like Algeria or Dubai, South Africa, we have the leadership of African working class in the form of Safari and other comrades who are there and who are prepared to take the African nationalism to the masses, who are prepared to solve the question of educating, winning African working class back to political life, back to revolutionary trajectory. This is really significant because it does make it, you don't see that on the continent. You don't see anyone say, we want to get the revolution back, we want to unite Africa, we want to complete the revolution, we want African nation to be united. Nobody does that. We make all kinds of projects. So now, everyone who is listening should be aware that this kind of organization, the African Business Party, exists on the ground, occupied by them. And we spent something like 12 days there. We had meetings, major meetings in three main places, in Johannesburg itself, which is the capital of Tanzania, and then in Portsmouth, which is somewhere of about an hour and a half drive, and then Everton away, so it is super distance from Johannesburg. So we found ourselves organizing in more than one place. We had a comrade traveling from Cape Town, which is like 13 hours, from Johannesburg in the southern tip of South Africa. We have government traveling from east also, which is like 6 or 7 hours. So, and it was really a powerful trip in the sense that we were able to sit face to face with the man. We were able to solve some of the problems we couldn't see as we could on the ground. We have now possibilities to build ISO. You heard the chairman speaking about it. We have identified who will be leading that work. We have the possibility to build economic development program. We have identified the coverage system, who is going to be in charge of that. We have identified who is going to lead the annual the African organization. We also identify who's going to solve who's going to lead the membership issue because we can recognize ourselves quite rapidly. So we'll also solve that question, which will be the membership coordinator. We already have solved the question, which is going to be the action coordinator. So all these key problems to be solved have been solved. Now is the other issue is the question of biosphere, how to produce it. And that's ongoing. Soon we will know what it will take for us to be printing it. Printing in South Africa. Now it's so key because Tanzania is a part of the South African region. And we have comrades from Mozambique, from Zimbabwe, from Congo, from Nigeria, from Somalia. All these different places are all located there, which means that we know these Africans from various places to one African national consciousness to be part of one organization. So that's
So it sounds like he may have gone through a tunnel or something to that effect. He's on a train now, but he was giving a pretty good summation of what it is that we're trying to do in South Africa. And the thing that impresses us about South Africa is these young comrades are extremely dedicated. I mean, there's no doubt about that. They understand the party's theory. They read it. They study it. They really well acquainted with it. And even we had a meeting with an organization that's, go ahead, Comrade Louise, we had lost you. Are you there, Louise?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah.
I was saying, the question is about including significance because the location of South Africa and all the African workers from around the African continent will live there, will be organized there. In fact, once the meeting was attended, it was facilitated by the brother from Nigeria and who also, joined on the spot. So the potential shots are huge. And I just want to unite with Chairman to say, one of the things that's characterized the government in occupied Tanzania is the youth of those government and the dedication to African internationalists. They study that day and night. These are something I will resume. It's something everyone should emulate. Study African nationalism, the original reports, the Congress, the previous government, and study all the trade. So that's really and one thing also we learn that I think all as internalized, to have actually international consciousness, it means also to develop economic consciousness to get that work done. And that's something that I myself learned a lot through the process with DC owner on the significance of building economically. And that's something the government on the ground are anxious about it, but it's something we should all internalize, always raising resources all the time. There should be no time with no raising resources. To be an internationalist, that's what it means. How are you going to raise resources to make the revolution happen? So that is something we learned about. We were on the ground there. And another thing I can say also being on the ground, have possibilities also to open a relationship with other forces who are not in the party. Because our struggle is for national liberation, which means that we have to be not take a very long in action. If we want to start the direction of the revolution, which means the direction the party is going to change. So it's only necessary for us to reframe with the legalized forces who might be going in opposite direction. So I think this also is something we experienced while we were in occupied South Africa. And I think myself and the Commonwealth there, we experienced also what it means to be knowing the protocols, knowing everything. It's not just something to study, but how you implement, how you carry out the rules, discipline, standards of party life. You really have to be able to do it. Chairman, I want to stop this.
Okay. And when you come back, maybe you can say just a little about Kenya and Paris. Oh, hold on. So that's kind of a thumbnail sketch of how things have looked, especially in Africa. But I mentioned Paris. Comrade Louise has been spending time in Paris too, where we reestablishing our presence there, our party presence there. We have committed comrades there, but reestablishing the presence, functioning as the party and what have you, and also understand there's movement again in Belgium and Kenya, where Comrade Louise has been working with a sister who's been building the party there in Kenya. So those are some of the things that's happening. What I'd like to do now is, if we could, Comrade Ghazi, if it's possible, to spend 10 or 15 minutes, getting feedback from the people, who are in this meeting.
Uhuru, Chairman.
Uhuru, are we prepared to do that?
Yes, we're unmuting the lines right now. And also, we have Adiko Kitamoma that is on the chat board. So if you are viewing from YouTube, please type in your questions now. He already gave a reminder. He already gave a reminder that people should be taking notes during the overview and the presentation. So we hope to get questions soon. All right, Uhuru, who's first? Who'd like to ask a question or make a comment around the overview and the presentations that were made?
Uhuru, this is Robert from Orlando.
Right, Robert.
Yeah, I was wondering, I know that we should all be striving to go to St. Louis on October, but can we bring, we're allowed to bring everyone or just people who are in the party?
You can bring comrades, especially people who you want to win, can attend the Congress as well. They don't have to be members of the party. In fact, if there are people who you want to be in the party, you should try to get them to the Congress, because I'm convinced if you get them to the Congress, we'll win them.
Thank you for answering my question.
Yes.
Great question from Comrade Robert, and thank you for that. Next question, anyone on the line or on the phone?
You're breaking up. You're breaking up. We can't. Uhuru.
Comrades. Thank you so much.
Was that Mensa?
Yes, sir. This is Mensa out of Las Vegas.
Good to hear from you, comrade. Good to hear from you.
Uhuru, thank you for that question, Comrade Mensa. Great question. Do we have any other questions from the comrades or concerns or salutes or any statements that they would like to make? Uhuru, do we have anything online yet?
Uhuru. So from Safari, we have, thank you, Secretary General Ghazi. We and Azani would like to share our appreciation for Chairman Amali Shatella, Deputy Chair Ona Zanea Shatella, and Eshe Luezi. My first question is about ISO. We are building ISO in 3 campuses as we speak. The first thing we are currently busy with is a political school within these campuses. We want to know if we can get material on ISO.
And
Uhuru, did you want to answer that, Chairman?
go ahead, Ghazi.
Uhuru.
Okay.
Yes, this is Ghazi and Aniko, and we will make sure to get the materials to you, Comrade Safari. Right now, the NCC is actually looking over the constitution of ISO. So we will not be able to send that to you, but we do have the POAs and other documents around ISO that we can send. And we actually could send the constitution if Chairman deems it, but it's not the acting constitution. As of right now, it's being looked over.
And one of the comments that I made to comrades here in the U.S. who are building ISO, rebuilding ISO, is that it will be done differently there, because there, from what I was able to learn while I was just there, it's possible for ISO to get on campuses in its own name and to operate despite the fact that it will have to do so with the authority of the campus. You can do that differently than here. And here, ISO will be built differently. It will be built as a student organization, but a student organization of party members who would actually organize campus-approved organizations or join campus-approved organizations who will do things like run for office in the campus and the school government and things like that. But as an institution, it will not be accountable to the campus. It will only be accountable to the party. And it won't have to, it won't even have to pretend to be. In Occupied Azania, I am impressed to believe it's possible to do something else, because I know the ANC and certainly the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania has a youth wing that is a student wing. I think it's a Pan-Africanist student organization, PASO, that can function on the campus, and it's recognized to be tied to the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania. Here, we'll have to do that differently. I hope I didn't muddy the water too much with that. Anyone else? And I want to just express appreciation to these comrades. You must understand the difficulties under which these comrades are functioning and operating. And one of them is a political difficulty that has come about with the assumption after what they call the apartheid state that was all white. And now that they have Africans who are in the government, there's an assumption of liberation haven't been accomplished. And that's one of the difficulties that we are confronted with there in Occupied Azania, Uhuru. And it's sort of, I guess, similar to here that now that Africans got civil rights, and that speaks to some kind of so-called freedom, you know. Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
Uhuru, Chairman, actually it was a two-part question, so we're going to ask the second part.
This question is from Mensa.
Oh, sorry.
Uhuru, so Mensa's question is the party looking to build campus-approved organizations of the APSP, USA, with emphasis on the HBCUs as an organic recruiting platform.
We are not looking to build campus-approved organizations of the party. IESO will be the student wing of the party. IESO will be the organization that will organize campus-approved entities or join campus-approved entities with the intention of gathering enough influence and strength in those organizations that we can use that platform as a means to carry out the party's agenda. We will also IESO members will actually run for offices in student government, again, with the intention of capturing posts and positions that will allow us to further the party's interest program, give us access to the kinds of resources that's on those campuses, and to create a body of, working class intellectuals, in these institutions. That's going to be really important for maintaining the intellectual, ideological integrity of the revolutionary movement in general. So we're not, for example, trying to get IESO approved as an organization of the campus, but IESO will, members of the party who are IESO will be on those campuses, and will organize student organizations if they don't exist, and sometimes if they do exist, and we find them too hostile or difficult or compromising, that we find it necessary to create another organization. IESO would create those organizations to get campus approval, but they won't. But IESO itself will not seek campus approval. I hope that's helpful. Hope I was clear. Anyway.
Thank you for that, Chairman. Do we have any other questions on the line or online for the Chairman?
Any other comrades? Anything else?
We have a question coming.
Uhuru, Chairman, this is Timba in St. Petersburg. I wanted to speak to you about the, I don't know if I'm being seen or not, but about the commerce that you're talking about, from the Africa sewing and backyard factories, and how that will be worked out in the U.S. What is the goal around that, and how would that further us in occupied design, or just in Africa, period?
Well, what I was speaking about in terms of the sort of like the backyard factories where we can make our own clothing and things like that. I was speaking mostly of that happening in West Africa and mostly in Ghana. And I see that because what is happening right now is there's a growing interest of among African people, a growing cultural awareness that makes African people open to African clothing. But not just that. I mean, things like shea butters and black soaps and an array of things that come from Africa that allows us to be able to establish our identity, or to reinforce our identity as Africans. These are things that we see, and I mentioned the clothing that could be made in Ghana, but also an export-import relationship too, where we can ship various kinds of shea butters and various kinds of soaps that I know would be extremely popular, especially with African culturalists and things like that. So, and then these products obviously could immediately be sold from the various Uhuru houses that's located in the furniture stores and Zenzele. Obviously, immediately they could be sold there. But my intention is to push the development of local offices. This is the first time in the history of my involvement in the Black Liberation Movement that we did not have local offices, that we had where people knew how to find us. They could come to the office to find us. That's where we have political education for the community, do all other kinds of things. But here too, we can have those products in these communities, and we exist in some of the most oppressed sectors, exploited sectors of the African colony. And here people can come and shop and get African garments and get the shea butters and get the various soaps and get the Burningsville newspaper and get the books that we publish and get the various other kinds of things that are produced and you know, that we are moving. So that's part of what I'm talking about. I see that mostly, primarily right now happening out of South Africa. I think we have the ability, not South Africa, but Ghana and West Africa. Now, the things that I'm talking about are popular in Europe, are popular in the United States, and could be extremely popular in places like the Bahamas, where, in addition to the locals being interested in that, also is a place where that's a major tourist industry, but you find very little there that's African or comes from Africa. And then, and just in terms of being able to have an income base for the movement there, where, you know, we can have those kinds of resources there. So we have to meet to decide, make some kind of determinations, because there's a lot of work that has to be done to make this happen. Export-import licenses, also things like identifying places where we can have the factories and people who can function in the factories and what have you. But these are the things that we're looking at, and they make sense to us economically and politically. So we can say that. In terms of South Africa, we have a lot more exploration to do on the economic side of that. But that's part of what it is that we were looking at. I hope I responded appropriately to what you just raised, Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman. Uhuru, thank you for that question, Timber, and thank you for that explanation, Chairman. Chairman, I did have a two-part question. I know that you did discuss Syria, but I was wondering if you could just say, if anything, or how the party should be reacting to this as far as organizing or being a part of events and things like that, marches that are happening against the war in Syria, and also around international news, around the sudden announcements from North Korea today that it would stop firing nuclear missiles and detonating nuclear bombs, and would even close its nuclear test sites. And what does that even like mean in the whole big scheme of things?
Let's talk about the Democratic People's Republic of Korea first, because there's a lot of ado surrounding the statements that allegedly come from Kim Il-jung about, did I just mix up the name of this president and his father or grandfather, Kim Jong-un? Because here's what you need to understand. Trump is planning to go to Korea. And so there's a saying that Koreans said they won't do this, do that. And part of what he said was, we don't have to do that no more. That we've established what we wanted to establish in terms of the nuclear testing and et cetera. But the thing that, and I think you should remember that, that's how he coined that, that's how he said it. But the other thing that should be understood is this, that the war that the United States initiated against the people and country of Korea was something that they did to stop what they call the spread of communism, with the assumption that workers would be able to take power there. They had just done it in China, and the Russian Revolution had happened, and the whole white world was running like hell from the possibility of these working class revolutions taking over. And to stop that, the United States government attacked the revolution as it was happening in Korea with the intention of destroying it, and also with the intention of using it as a platform to attack China. That's what Douglas MacArthur, the guy for whom they've named highways and a whole bunch of other stuff in the United States are about. That's what he intended to do. And when he went into Korea, of course, and you have to understand that Korea was a genuine revolutionary movement. Kim Il-sung, who is considered the father of the Korean Revolution, Kim Il-sung was a genuine revolutionary force, and he led a revolutionary movement that fought for workers' power, and then fought the United States government, and the Chinese came and fought the United States government too, because it was clear that the United States wanted to use that as a means by which they could attack China. And what they did, they succeeded in stopping the U.S. government, fought them to a stalemate, so that I think it's what they call the 38th parallel. Malcolm X, you might have heard him speak. He talks about how they drove them across the Yalaloo, which is an important river there. And so that the war was never officially ended. But what happened was some kind of armistice, and then there's this demilitarized zone that's mined, and with soldiers on both sides, the Koreans on one side and the puppet regime on the other side, with more than 30,000. They say 30,000, so it's probably 100,000 U.S. troops, and then their family members there as well. And what their policy has been is to pretend that the Democratic People's Republic doesn't exist as a legitimate state. And they have called the leaders crazy, irrational, all they're interested in is power for themselves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They created this whole narrative, and they have refused to meet with them. Certainly the presidents have refused, because they said meeting with them then legitimizes them, and it's a statement of recognition of them, and they would never do that. That's what they've said. And what Kim Jong-il has done, Kim Jong-un has done with this nuclear testing and what have you, and he was quite clear on the need to do that, is to protect his government and protect their system from an attack by the United States government, because they said, look at what they've done in all these other places. And then also because Korea was identified clearly by the Bush regime as a policy statement, as a part of an axis of evil that had to be destroyed. And so they built a nuclear capacity and demonstrated quite clearly the ability to attack the United States, that made attacking Korea something that they couldn't consider. And also, they knew that they would have to pay a terrible price in a conventional attack, conventional warfare in Korea. So when you say Trump, however they want to paint the picture, and whatever the reason that Korea finally gives for meeting with the United States, the real issue is the United States has been forced to recognize Korea as a legitimate entity, and Trump's going there, talking about going there, is a statement that reinforces that. And not only has it recognized it, it has recognized Korea as a legitimate nuclear power. So there's no statement has been made yet by the Koreans that they are going to destroy their nuclear weapons or anything like that. What they've said is they have no reason to test them anymore. And so that's where that issue lies. And the other question that you raised, what was it around? Say it again.
Oh, Syria and what party comrades can do on the ground.
Anything that's happening around Syria, we should try to intervene. And we should try to intervene in a fashion based on the statement that came from the coalition. Because ours has been the most significant statement that has been made, and people are talking about that who participate in demonstrations in New York. I just left the steering committee meeting, a Black is Back Coalition steering committee meeting And everybody's talking about how that statement, and everybody wants to keep on making statements because ours is the only statement that actually put forth the interests of African people, the centrality of that question, and also drew the comparison between the attack on Syria by the United States government and the attack on Ferguson and African people, throughout this country, etc. So it was really powerful, and people appreciated that. And I feel like we should continue to participate in demonstrations. If somebody else is having a demonstration, we ask if the coalition can be there, speak on it, read our messages if necessary, say the same general thing that we've said, and also represent the Black is Back coalition. We should do that every opportunity we get, and if we have the ability to do it independently, then we should do actions of our own. And I think it would be good if we can do them in the name of the coalition, because that's something. And I say, we can be like at the press conference we did here. I was Chairman Omali Shatella, Chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, and a member of the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, et cetera. And the Black is Back Social Justice Committee, the Black is Back Coalition is the one that called this action.
Chairman, thank you so much for that. We have 2 questions I want to get in here as soon as possible. One
other thing, though, and I think was brought out in the steering committee meeting we had, people should really begin to point the finger at Israel, because they're talking about nuclear inspection. Let's inspect the nuclear weapons that Israel has. Let's force the people to have to talk about Israel being a nuclear power in the Mid-East region, a terrorist organization with nuclear weapons, and all the other things that Israel does. It was killing Palestinians even as we were demonstrating in opposition to what was happening in Syria. So they want to point the finger at Israel as well.
Yes, Chairman, I 100% unite with that, and hope all the comrades have heard that as well. We do have 2 international questions that I wanted to get in here as soon as possible. So, Aniko.
So the first one is a comment from Clara Kimi in Kenya. She says, "This is not a question, it's a special salute to the APSP in USA. I've learned so much from this live stream, and we're building to win."
Yeah, he's related to comrade. Yeah, thank you. It's good to hear from you. And the Kenyan front is going to be critical. So I just want to salute you and really appreciate your courage in building there, and let you know that that the party is with you, and whatever we can do in general to support your efforts, we're ready to take that on. Uhuru.
And the next question is from Asa, who I'm assuming is an Azania.
Yes.
It's Asa.
That's Asa. Go ahead.
Yeah. It says, "We had a note on the necessity of security because of the secret police in this country. Since African people are killed for speaking against the state, how do we approach this when we get involved?"
Well, the real security that we have and I think that we should develop all kinds of protocols and techniques, security techniques and protocols. That's extremely important. And we should really understand how sophisticated the South African regime is in terms of its counterintelligence work. But the real, and we should develop protocols around that. I mean, even use of cell phones and things like that in our meeting spaces is something that we should begin to prohibit. And another thing that we should make sure is that everything we do and say is something that comes from the organization. It's an organizational determination, and to make sure that we're not functioning as individuals, that we uphold democratic centralism and make every assault on liberalism, fight against liberalism, because those are the kinds of things that leave us vulnerable to infiltration, to assault, to things like being pushed out of place, provocateurs, etc. And the critical thing, of course, is our relationship with the people. The people represent the best security that we have. We have to wrap ourselves around the people and have the people wrap themselves around us based on our principles and what it is that we stand for. And we have to try and build everything we do with the support of the people. That's going to be the critical determination of whether we have security or not. And the more we talk about Occupy Tanzania or South Africa, the more it's clear to me that the party, we should really look at the ability to build the party there as a genuine African internationalist formation. And part of what I mean by that, as it relates to South Africa, which may not be true in many other places. I feel the same way about the Bahamas, where there's so many Africans who have been pushed out of Haiti into that area. I think that we should be recruiting members of our party in South Africa who come from all these various and diverse locations, who've been pushed out of Zimbabwe and pushed out of other places by poverty and oppression, et cetera. They should, we should also be winning them to the party. And these will prove to be fierce fighters for African internationalism. And the same thing in the Bahamas with Africans who from Haiti and who catch hell in the Bahamas from other Africans precisely because they're from Haiti. And we've seen what's happening in South Africa where mobs have attacked Africans from Zimbabwe as aliens while they let the real aliens walk around scot-free, stealing our resources and everything else that should belong to us. So that's a really, and I think we should study this whole issue of counterinsurgency. And to the extent that we are capable, we need to begin building components of our organizations that specialize in security and components that are really aware of counterinsurgency techniques and how we can protect ourselves from infiltration and from attacks by the settler state, the neo-colonial settler state there in South Africa.
Uhuru. Comrade McCullough from London says Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. So I just want to thank everyone for your participation in the Q&A. And I know we still have a few questions and everything coming down. They will be answered, but we need to move forward towards the announcements. And I'm going to start with the announcements of the party's 7th Congress, which is October 6th through October 13th. 2018 in St. Louis, Missouri. Chairman already laid out the very importance of coming, and that either you come or please send your obituary. And that will be, the title is Congress of the African Socialist Party Vanguard, the Advanced Detachment of the African Revolution. And there is early bird registration, which is open now through April 30th. So please make sure to register as soon as possible before April 30th. You go to apspcongress.org, apspcongress.org for your early bird special, and that is running until, when did I say?
30th.
April 30th. And the prices, just so everybody knows, the early bird registration is $175 plus $11.81 fee. And it's discounted rate on registration for the full week of October 6th through October 12th, 2018, register by April 30th. Once that is done, it is regular registration, and that is $35 daily to $200 for the full week plus the fee. And that is registration for single days of the whole week. Uhuru. So now we're going to, yes, Jim?
Uhuru.
Oh, yes, now we are going to move to the next announcement, which is going to be around the, well, I'm not going to say what it's going to be around because that's what that person's for. So I am pleased to introduce my comrade Elikia Ngoma from the Office of the Chair. Uhuru.
Uhuru, this is Alikia announcing the 2018 Marcus Garvey Legacy Cruise, which you know that this cruise is a fundraiser cruise for the African Socialist International. And just in case you weren't sure, the ASI is the umbrella organization that brings us the party. APSP, Occupy Tanzania, USA, Bahamas, Europe, and all of the other party organizations that we have. This is a 7-day cruise taking place December 9th through 16th, 2018, sailing from Miami, Florida to Mahogany Bay, to the Cayman Islands, to Belize, and then finally Cozumel, Mexico. Registration is open. You are able to make your deposits. You can visit uhurulegacycruise.org. That's uhurulegacycruise.org. And you can find all of the contact information there. You can also fill out something called the JOT form, which when you fill out this JOT form, the travel agent will be notified and she will call you back to let you know any additional information that you can't find on the website, although the cabin options, the itinerary, and the pricing is all on the website. And you can also make your deposit by calling the travel agent and, again, filling out the JOT form. So again, all of that is up, uhurulegacycruise.org.
So.
And is Comrade Yejide on the line? Comrade Yejide? All right, well, while we wait for Comrade Yejide, we do have an announcement from the Director of Agitation.
Uhuru, was that Yejide?
Yes,
Uhuru, Comrade.
Yes, I'm on.
Comrade Yejide, could you make an announcement of the African Liberation Day?
African Liberation Day is on May 26th. Comrade here in Washington, D.C. is planning to have that at the in Southeast Washington, D.C. There's still a number of things that are outstanding that we hope to get together in the next couple of weeks and make sure that we can put it out to the whole entire party. So please stay tuned for that.
Uhuru, the next couple of weeks. What is this? April, what? Next couple of weeks? I mean, they're talking from May 26th, and you'll let us know in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah.
How the hell is that going to work? How do people, get organized?
That's something that I wanted to raise at the NCC meeting. But yeah, there's been some contradictions in the organizing around the African Liberation Day.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll leave it there.
Okay.
All right. Ghazi?
Uhuru, Chairman. Now our last and final announcement will be made by our Director of Agitation Propaganda, Akile Anayi.
Uhuru. This is an announcement for everyone who has not purchased their burning spear to please do so. Again, in our party's constitution, it is mandated for all probationary rank and file members to sell at least 25 spears a month, and you can purchase your bundle of spears at burningspearmarketplace.com. It's $15 for 25 spears, and for all non-probationary members, it's 100 spears per month. And we still get reports at the end of the month of around the number of 30 people not selling the spear, and that is against the party's constitution. It is mandated for all of us to be out in the streets selling that spear. A part of our daily routine, our task is to sell that paper, and we have to rebuild the culture of selling the spear within our party. And this is the only way we can do it, is if all party members are purchasing the burning spear. So you all need to be making sure you're doing that. I get, lists every month with the people who have not purchased their spears, and there are serious implications when you don't sell the spear. And also, it's a violation of the Constitution, which puts you, which means you won't be in good standing when it comes to the Congress in terms of voting. So you guys definitely want to make sure you can participate in the Congress in every capacity. So go to burningspearmarketplace.com and order your spears.
Uhuru, I just want to say, idea of just selling 25 spears per month is almost a joke. So people should really take advantage of this space that you've got, because that's going to change. I mean, selling the spear is just a critical responsibility that we have. If I've done it, and other leaders of the party have done it, there's no reason why you can't do it, and there's every reason why you must do it, because that's the thing that puts us in the closest proximity with ordinary African people in our communities. That's the day-to-day work that we should be done. Every party member should be engaged in selling the spear all the time. It's not just something you do every now and then. It's not just something you just do on Saturdays. The spear is something that should be in our hands, and we should be selling it all the time. And everybody, I mean, $15 is nothing to order the 25 spears that we need to take out into the world. So that's an absolute responsibility. It's a necessity. And it's a membership requirement. It's a membership requirement. Because if you can't sell the Burning Spear newspaper, I mean, then when we're asking just that of you, to be in contact with ordinary people in your community, then how can you be trusted to do anything else that's supposed to represent the revolution? That's a joke. So get the Burning Spear newspaper, or, you're making a profound statement that I'm going to try to follow up on in terms of your participation, because selling the spear is just one of the easiest tasks that we have and one of the most important. Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you for that, Chairman. We have one more announcement. Uhuru.
Okay. Uhuru, comrades. This is Iniko Kitiamoma. I'm the newly appointed president of the Working Committee for the African International Student Organization. And I'm just making a call to all student party members. If you are a student in the party, please email me with the information so I can get in contact with you. My email is Iniko Kitiamoma, that's INIKOKITEMOMA @apspuhuru.org. Once again, that's INIKOKITEMOMA @apspuhuru.org. And I can let you guys know right now that our proposed date for this, we're gonna have a convention, and the proposed date for it is September 1st and 2nd, and it'll be held in St. Louis in the newly Uhuru House. So once again, please email me with your information so I can get in contact with you. And also, if you know any other African students who are interested in joining the African People's Socialist Party, please give them my email as well and my information so I can get in contact with them as well. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Those are all the announcements, Chairman. Uhuru.
Uhuru. So I just want to really express appreciation for people coming onto this meeting. And I think, as I said earlier, that the party is right now in a great momentum and moving forward. And everybody should be excited about this upcoming period and building for this Congress and all of the other work that we're doing. We are establishing the trajectory for the African liberation movement in the world right now. And you should move with the confidence that that's what you're doing, and that's exactly what it means to be the advanced detachment, to be the vanguard of the African revolution. It also means, as I said earlier, that individuals in this party have to assume the responsibility of building the party. That is day-to-day work, and you're going to have to build local offices wherever we're located so that people can find us and where we can begin to establish a real relationship. These offices become kinds of fortresses, if you will, or many fortresses throughout our African communities everywhere. I will express appreciation to everybody, Comrade Ghazi, Secretary General, for pulling this together. Again, Comrade Maisha for facilitating my ability to communicate with you on this end. All of you who have come to this discussion, and I think it's a statement of what you recognize about the significance of the African People's Socialist Party. So we want to go ahead and move this project forward to St. Louis, forward to the 7th Congress of the African People's Socialist Party, Izwe Lake to E-Africa. Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you so much for that, Chairman. I just want to give a reminder to everyone that is listening. If you know any comrades that were unable to participate in the meeting, the link will be staying live where they can watch the recorded version of the meeting. And we ask that everyone make sure to watch the recorded version of the meeting if they have missed it. And I will also be sending out an email with the link as well.